commercial. And here's just a thought on creating a 30-second commercial. So to me, there's three elements of a good commercial. Three elements to a good commercial. So element number one is going to be what I'm going to call just a brief description of who you are. So what is a brief description of your firm? Can anybody give me a brief description of your firm? Anybody want to give it a shot? Anybody want to give it a shot? A brief description? Blake, give me a brief description of what you guys do. How'd you break your arm, by the way?
It's a great story. Slipped on ice.
You slipped on ice? Oh man, that's too bad.
I don't know, we specialize in sales and service of heating and air conditioning equipment.
Okay, terrific. Okay, so there's a brief description. Yeah, we specialize in sales of heating and air conditioning equipment. Wonderful. Good. Anybody else want to give it a shot? Rich, what would you? What's a brief description of your firm?
We're a small restaurant equipment dealer. We stock some stuff and we drop some stuff too.
Yeah. Okay. So a variety of restaurant equipment services. Great. Anybody else? Scott, how about yourself?
We're third generation. We're family-owned, third generation. We have experience in truck sales, repairs, renting and leasing.
Awesome. Mike, do you want to give it a shot?
Yeah, leading manufacturer of color and additives for plastics.
Okay, cool. So all of those would be examples of a brief description of who we are. So you have something in my mind that's not too complicated that can share what we do. Everybody okay with that? Yes?
I mean, you know my company.
I do.
It's very difficult to explain what we do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, if you gave it a shot, Leslie, what might you say? Because you can do a better shot than I'm sure than I could do.
We are a firm that we do predictive analytics, big data, artificial intelligence, and machine learning.
There you go. Cool. Perfect. Okay. So that I like it. I think that was well said. Everybody clear? Well, if nothing else, it's just intriguing what Leslie just said, and I think, I mean, personally, I sort of get it a little bit, but I don't have all the answers. And now step two, hopefully can help clarify what step one is, right? That's the purpose of step two in making a call. So step two, in my mind, after you have a brief description on what you do, what do you think? That was pretty good, wasn't it? Jen, did you like it?
Yeah.
So step two is, by the way, one of the things that I find on when people are prospecting, it's way too much stuff about what? About themselves, right? People talk way too much about themselves. Man, I can remember years ago attending a trade show with your team at PAC, and actually being at the show with the team. And I always remember this, just watching a salesperson with a prospect, and they have Precision has this elaborate equipment at the show, and watching a salesperson talking to a prospect for about 30 minutes, and the prospect never spoke. I promise you that's the truth. Never spoke. Salesperson spoke to the prospect for 30 minutes, and the prospect never spoke one word. It's like, oh my gosh. That's unbelievable, right? So a lot of times it's too much about us. So step two on a good 30-second commercial, in my mind, is less about me, more about you. And what that means is we're going to call it putting out 2 or 3 pains that the client typically runs into. So step number 2 on a good 30-second commercial is what are 2 to 3 pains that your services can help clients with in their business or for them personally, whatever it is that you do. So for example, what does that mean? So if I'm in Leslie's world, right, Leslie just gave us this wonderful analysis of what did you say, Leslie?
Predictive analytics.
Predictive analytics. And so we work with hospitals, as an example, like yourself, Jim, who maybe are struggling to reduce, I'm trying to think of the terminology. What's that?
Readmissions.
Struggling to reduce the amount of readmissions, or maybe just frustrated that when somebody comes back, I'm making this up, when somebody comes back for a second surgery, that they go to a different hospital, that the retention rate is not what it should be, and just, again, I'm throwing out pains here, throwing out pains. So what I'm really trying to do is, again, brief description of us. What are the pains that people in your world are facing? And so what we have found is that when you're really using the pains that are real and legit for the organization, it's much more effective than just talking about us. Questions so far? So really what you got to do is come up with one or two or three what we call pain bullets that I can sort of throw out in a conversation to help create the conversation, right? And I know in my world, maybe different than your world, that you can use different pains based on what? So if I'm talking to an attorney, as an example, I might use different pains than if I'm talking to a salesperson. If I'm talking to the CEO of an organization, might use different pains than if I'm talking to a sales manager, right? Because each of them have different pains. If I'm talking to someone who supports sales but is not in sales, there may be different pains that when you're having the conversation with your neighbor that you want to use, right? So that's why, right, you got to understand the role and the responsibilities to help figure out what's potentially the specific or appropriate pains, right? So again, different pains, man. If you have 20 or 30 different pains you can draw from, you can utilize the appropriate pain based on that circumstance, if that's appropriate, right? Meaning, you may have the same pains, and that's cool too, right? We're all in different, slightly different places. So step 2 of the process is throw out 2 or 3 pains. Step 3, in my mind, is some type of what I'm going to call a mini contract. And what does that suggest? What that suggests to me, at some point after you give your 30-second commercial, what really is your objective?
To get a further call, get another appointment.
The real objective is I agree, Ken, is to ask a couple of questions, find out if there's really a reason to spend some more time together, right? Which could mean an appointment or a further phone conversation or however that fits in your world. So at some level, the mini contract in my mind is, John, what I was really hoping to do is ask you a couple of questions, find out a little bit more about what you're doing, share with you a little bit about what we do, and really figure out together if it makes sense to talk a little bit further. Would that be okay? Right, so a good 30-second commercial hopefully has these 3 elements as part of the equation. Now again, that's just a thought, right? There's lots of variations of what I just sort of shared with you right there.